Hello, I'm that geeky gamer and welcome to my show. Well, today we are going to take a look at a film that a lot of people, most people, of the ones who have seen it, would say is a pretty awful film. But you know what? I think they're wrong. Yeah, there are plenty of things wrong with this film, but it's nowhere near as bad as most people would say it is. Okay, so it didn't succeed in what it was trying to do, and it was a complete commercial failure, causing the company that made it to be shut down. But in all honesty, I do not think this film deserves all the hate it gets. So, to find out once and for all just how good or bad this film truly is, we're going to take a closer look at Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. So the first thing you'll most likely notice with this film is that it's all CG. Some may like that, some may hate it, but there's no question that it looks unbelievable. When this film was new, nothing else, at least not anything CG, looked this good, and it still looks amazing. There's just so much attention to detail, and everything is spectacularly well made. Considering this was the first photorealistic computer animated film, the quality they managed to get out of the visuals is amazing. Okay, so the film does occasionally dip a bit into the uncanny valley, but nowhere near as much as virtually every second of every animated Zemeckis film ever made. The biggest problem with the film's visuals, though, is the fact that it could almost just as well have been live action, at least in my opinion. Yeah, they would have had to use a lot of green screen and still use a lot of CG material, but considering every character apart from the aliens/phantoms are human, and that a lot of the settings, not all of them but still a lot, could be created or found in real life, there isn't really a strong reason that this film needs to be CG. I guess it was done like this mostly to show off what could be done with computer graphics, but that's a pretty small thing to base an entire film on. Now, some of you may be wondering about the story of the film. After all, if the story is good, a lot of minor problems and flaws can easily be excused. Well, I guess this is where the film suffers the most. You see, although I find the story to be decent enough, it doesn't exactly have a lot to do with the Final Fantasy games, which is what the film is supposed to be based on. Yeah, I know, most of the games have individual storylines, so the film can have its own separate storyline as well, but the thing is that it doesn't even resemble any of the games. The film tells the story of Aki, a young doctor who is scouring the globe in search of 8 spirits which are found inside some sort of living tissue. She's doing this in order to create an energy wave to be used against the so-called phantoms. You see, the world of the film is infested with these phantoms that came to Earth when a meteor crash landed on Earth. Ever since, the humans have been in a war against these phantoms, and the only places people are safe from them are inside barrier cities. Cities inside of an energy barrier that the phantoms, for some reason, can't get through. Anyway, while Aki is out searching for one of the 8 spirits, she runs into a group of soldiers, one of which turns out to be her ex-boyfriend, I think, named Gray.
Nice to see you too.
After Gray and his men... after Gray and his squad saves Aki's butt, they bring Aki back to the barrier city of New York, where she meets up with her colleague and mentor Dr. Sid, who is helping her collect the 8 spirits. Apparently, the theories and technologies behind the barriers and what the humans know about the phantoms are all based on his research, and he is also the one who came up with the idea of assembling spirits to create the anti-phantom energy wave. After Sid and Aki has had a little chat, they attend some sort of council meeting where the people in charge of this world, I guess, are gathered to discuss whether or not they are going to use a newly developed space cannon called the Zeus cannon against the phantoms. This man, named General Hein, wants to use the cannon as he means it's a proven effective weapon that will eliminate the phantom threat, but Aki and Dr. Sid believe that it would be better to use the energy wave thing, as the cannon could end up, well, listen to how Dr. Sid puts it.
It means there's a very good chance the beam from the Zeus cannon will burn the phantoms in the meteor.
Exactly. Thank you.
Now, however, it also means that the beam energy may be too strong, injuring the Earth.
Injure the Earth? You mean the Gaia?
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about the Gaia thing. You see, Dr. Sid has this theory that the Earth is actually alive. Kind of. He believes that the Earth has its own spirit, the Gaia, and that nothing truly dies, it just returns to Gaia. This is actually fairly similar to the live stream thing in Final Fantasy VII. Not identical, but similar. Kinda like how Dr. Sid is similar to the Sid character of the games. Only in the films, he's Sid with an S, not a C. Why? I don't really know, and I don't really care. It's just a bit pointless. Anyway, the council doesn't exactly agree with Dr. Sid and his Gaia theory, and Hein calls it a fairy tale and begins mocking Dr. Sid, which I always found a bit weird. I mean, they clearly believe in spirits and that every living thing has a soul and all that, but believing that the Earth has a spirit and that blasting it with a huge cannon could hurt it is a huge stretch? I just don't get that. Anywho, at this point, Dr. Sid explains his energy wave plan, but General Hein still believes he's full of crap, and that the Zeus cannon is the only reasonable and effective choice, as there's no evidence to the contrary. However, Aki then stands up, claiming to have evidence that the energy wave will work. She says that they have been able to contain a phantom infection, more on that later, within a terminally ill patient using the partial energy wave. General Hein finds this hard to believe.
Where is the proof?
You want proof? You want proof? You can't handle the proof! Actually, Aki reveals that she is the terminally infected patient by showing some sort of hologram of the infection contained within some sort of barrier, projected from her chest plate. This shocks both the Council and General Hein, and wins Aki and Dr. Sid some time, as the Council decides to postpone the firing of the Zeus cannon. So Aki travels out to find the next spirit, but this time she's accompanied by Gray and his squad, consisting of Ryan, the big black guy who has kind of a brotherly relationship with Gray, Jane, the tough, gruff, ball-busting woman with a budding romantic relationship with the team's final member, Neil, the oh-so-delightful comic relief.
What?
Seriously, he is kind of funny, but almost every line he has is some sort of quip.
And let's not forget my personal favorite, the big fat giant phantom.
What's with her and that stupid plant?
It's amore, baby.
Proceed to the nearest evacuation facility. Proceed to the nearest evacuation facility.
I think we should proceed to the nearest evacuation facility.
Enough already! Anyway, let's stop here for a moment to take a look at the cast. For the most part, the voiceovers of all the characters are great, but occasionally Ming-Na, the voice of Aki, is a bit too emotionless.
Every night, the same dream.
Steve Buscemi does his usual excellent job as Neil. It's just a shame he has to have so many quips all the time.
Why are you always busting my chops?
Donald Sutherland also does a great job as Dr. Sid, and Ving Rhames and Perry Gilpin put in quite a decent performance as Ryan and Jane respectively. However, in my opinion, the performance that really steals the show is James Woods as General Hein.
Could you please explain why?
He just does a fantastic job and really makes Hein into a great villain. Anyway, our heroes set off to find the next spirit in a barren wasteland. After finding it inside something called an oval pack, the team is attacked by a bunch of the phantoms as they appear to be drawn towards Aki. Okay, before we move on, I have to talk a bit about the phantoms and Aki's connection to them. You see, the biggest problem by far in this film has to do with the phantoms. They're fine as an enemy, but they are really inconsistent. Nothing about the phantoms seems to remain true for long. For instance, we clearly see several times during the film that you can shoot through them, and yet we also see several times that they can be shot and killed. How does that make sense? Also, they can apparently kill you just by passing through you, as this removes your soul from your body. In fact, a lot of the times the phantoms aren't really attacking, they just come in contact with someone who then dies. However, it's not really clear how much of them has to pass through you in order to kill you. Sometimes they just infect you with some sort of phantom parasite that has to be killed before it burrows too deep inside of you, and other times they actually cut you and make you bleed. What the fuck? Also, considering that the phantoms can move through solid objects, why the fuck can't they move through the barriers defending the cities? It's never explained just how the fuck this works, and it doesn't really make sense, at least not to me. I mean, seriously, does anyone have an explanation for any of this? Dr. Sid, can you explain it to me?
I can't explain it at the moment, but...
Yeah, that's what I thought. You know, I bet the writers of this film used that line a lot as well. So anyway, I also have to mention Aki's connection to the phantoms. I don't really have any problems with this element of the film, but it needs to be explained. You see, ever since Aki was infected, she's been having a weird recurring dream, apparently set on the home planet of the Phantoms. It seems to take place during some sort of war, and Aki is convinced that the dream is actually some sort of message, but she has never been able to figure out what it means. Okay, so moving on with the story, Aki, Gray and the rest of the squad manages to escape from the Phantoms, but Aki passes out in the process. It appears that the infection within her is about to break out of the containment barrier, and the soldiers sent by General Hein to keep a look on both Aki and Gray try to place them under arrest. You see, General Hein ordered them to do so if they saw anything unusual about Aki's behavior, as he believes she might be under the influence of the Phantoms due to the infection. Gray and his squad manages to subdue Hein's soldiers, however, but not before Aki is shot in her chest plate. They rush her to Dr. Sid, who tells them that he has to fix it fast, and that he has to implement the spirit they found directly into it, but he needs time. He therefore places Gray in a deep sleep so he can be her guardian soul while he works. Yeah, I'm not really sure how this works either. Anyway, Aki walks Gray through her dream, which they experience together somehow, and she finally manages to finish the dream. We see that during the war, the Phantoms suddenly stop completely and stare off in the distance. We then see a huge wave of flames coming towards them and burning them alive. Finally, we see the planet explode and a small meteor fly off from the explosion, holding some Phantoms on it. Aki then wakes up just as a bunch of soldiers storm in and arrest them all. While all this has been going on, General Hein and his men have been searching Aki and Dr. Sid's records to try and find proof that Aki is a Phantom spy. They come across Aki's recordings of her dreams, which leads them to arrest her. Major Elliot, General Hein's right-hand man, points out that this will probably be more than enough to convince the council to approve the use of the Zeus cannon, but Hein feels that they will need an extra push in the right direction. He decides to take control of the barrier control room and shut down the barrier in one section of the city to let the Phantoms in. He says this is because he has to force the council to take action, but to me this doesn't make much sense. I mean, think about it. They already have enough evidence to push the council to approve the cannon, what with the dream videos and all, but yet General Hein feels the need to shut down the barrier, let the Phantoms in, and possibly kill several innocent civilians, which is exactly what happens, by the way. Yeah, I know, he intended to lure the Phantoms in for a controlled elimination, but still, why risk it? I mean, Major Elliot at one point even says,
Dr. Ross's dream should be all the council needs to authorize the firing of the Zeus cannon.
So again, why go through with this risky and needless operation? Maybe I've misunderstood something, or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but this just doesn't make sense to me. So General Hein turns off the barrier, and as you might expect, things go straight to hell. The Phantoms don't just break into the intended sector, but they manage to break through to the rest of the city as well, using the pipes transporting bioetheric energy, whatever that is. This doesn't seem to make sense, because as General Hein points out,
That's impossible. No living thing could survive in those pipes.
yeah, but plenty of living things are see-through or invisible, can withstand bullets and move through solid material, right? Why is this such a huge surprise? And why haven't anyone figured out what these Phantoms really are yet? Is it really that difficult to figure out? Apparently it is, as one of the biggest revelations of the film comes from Aki when she, Gray and the others are imprisoned. She explains that she understands what the dream means now, and that she now knows why they haven't been able to figure out the relationship between the different types of Phantoms.
What friggin' relationship?
They had assumed that the Phantoms were invading, and that the media was just a form of transportation, but the small Phantoms don't seem to have any sort of relationship with the giant Phantoms, and indeed they don't. Aki explains that the bigger Phantoms are more like our elephants or other animals, and the reason the Phantoms brought these creatures with them to an invasion was that they weren't invading. You see, the Phantoms were blasted away from their planet when they destroyed it in a war, and the media brought them to Earth. This makes Neil quizzical, as he asks,
But how could they survive the trip across outer space on a hunk of rock?
They didn't.
You mean that the creatures that are usually invisible to the naked eye, can walk through solid material, withstand gunfire, and who don't seem to be attacking us most of the time, are actually ghosts? Why, this is the most shocking thing I've heard since I've found out that eating rat poison sandwiches are bad for you! I mean, come on! You've even called them Phantoms. Isn't that another word used for ghosts? Besides, there are just so many things that point to these things being something supernatural. So when you tell me that they are ghosts, I don't really find that all that surprising. Sorry. So anyway, General Hein's plans turns to shit, and Aki and the gang escape from their prison cells only to have to run away from the Phantom Menace, which is something a lot of us has done at one time or another. The gang manages to escape to the hangar, but Ryan is badly injured in the process, and they have to leave him behind. At the hangar, the team has to do a bunch of stuff to get their spaceship off the ground, and in the process, Ryan, Neil and Jane are killed by phantoms. After fighting off some phantoms and engaging the ship's autopilot, Gray, who is still on the ground, tells Aki and Dr. Sid to get out and leave him, which doesn't really make sense. Why couldn't he just run to and get in the spaceship? Wasn't there enough time? Then why is there time for him to stay behind while Aki and Sid fly off, only to return for him and pick him up anyway? Unless I'm missing something, this scene is entirely pointless. Jane did something similar before she died as well. You see, when Neil gets killed, she furiously shoots the phantom responsible. She then sees another phantom approaching, but instead of running away as Gray tells her to do, and that she seems to have time to do as well, she just stands there, turns off a communicator, and gets willingly killed. What is with these characters and their desire to die? Is it that the living world is so terrible that they just can't wait to go to the spirit world? I don't know, maybe they just really want to get out of this film as quick as possible. So after Aki, Gray and Sid flies away, we see General Hein as he contemplates killing himself for what he did to the city. However, when the computer in his ship asks him for a destination, he forgets all about that and decides to go to the Zeus cannon, and this really bugs me. Through most of the film, Hein seems like he's not really just evil. He's a normal man who just wants revenge on the Phantoms for killing his family, which is definitely understandable. Even when he goes a bit overboard with the whole barrier scheme, he still has a human side, especially when we see and hear him regret his actions.
What have I done?
But then he changes all of a sudden. In this scene, it seems like he wants to end it all because of what he did, but he suddenly decides fuck it and goes to annihilate the Phantoms and anyone who stands in his way one way or another. I guess you could argue that he just snapped or that he knows it will ultimately fail and therefore does it so he can die that way, but that seems like quite an unnecessary and inconvenient way to go about it. So Aki, Gray and Sid start searching for the lost spirit, and Sid says they found a match in the meteor crater, suggesting that the final spirit is a phantom spirit. Gray thinks going down there would be suicide, and that they should just keep searching until they find another compatible spirit, but Aki and Sid thinks it would be a good idea to check it out. What's with these morons? How come the one guy who's not a doctor is the most reasonable one? There is no need for them to risk their lives looking for the spirit inside the phantom crater. They have plenty of time to look for it, and yeah, it might take some time to find a compatible spirit elsewhere, but at least you won't have to tempt death just to find it. Am I the only one who finds this ridiculous? So Aki, Gray and Sid go to the phantom crater to look for the final spirit, and General Hein gets the Zeus cannon ready to fire at the crater. You can probably see where this is going. Aki and the gang manages to find the spirit in probably the fastest and luckiest way imaginable.
Okay, we're over the meeting. Do you have it in sight, Doctor?
There are so many of them. Wait! Yes! I'm tracking the 8th spirit moving along the crater surface.
Wow, is that lucky! There are hundreds, if not thousands or more of the damn phantoms in the crater, and it only takes them a couple of seconds to narrow it down to one? That's quite a stretch. Meanwhile, General Hein is ready to fire when one of his men informs him that they're picking up an unidentified ship near the crater. Hein sees them on his monitor, notices that it's Aki and her friends, and decides to fire the cannon anyway, as Aki and the gang are considered traitors. He fires and the blast kills a bunch of the phantoms, including the 8th spirit, but it also causes a huge phantom plant thing to grow out of the crater. This thing breaks Aki and Gray's vehicle free from the ship and strands them in the crater. Aki contacts General Hein and tries to get him to cease fire, but Hein insists on blasting the crater until every phantom is gone, which, considering that the infestation just got worse when he fired the last time, doesn't make much sense, but I guess there's no point in beating that particular drum again. Hein keeps firing until the cannon overheats, but that doesn't stop him. He decides to override the safety system to get it to fire again. Meanwhile, Aki and Gray stumbles upon the actual Gaia, and they also find a new compatible spirit. The only problem is that it's hidden among the phantoms closing in on them, and Dr. Sid informs Gray that he can't shoot any of them, since he could end up killing the spirit they're looking for. Aki tries to reactivate the shield on their vehicle, while Sid tries to figure out which phantom is the final spirit, but unfortunately she falls asleep. Typical woman. Can't be trusted to do anything. What? It turns out that the 8th spirit is actually inside Aki. Yeah, remember that infection she had? Somehow it changed slightly at some point, turning it into the final spirit. Aki found this out in her dream, and she uses this information to create the anti-phantom energy wave, and uses the vehicle's shield to project it onto the phantoms. This seems to be working until another blast is fired from the Zeus cannon into the Gaia, causing many more phantom things to appear and the energy wave to become ineffective. Hein tries to fire the cannon again, but this causes the cannon to explode. Meanwhile, in the crater, Gray convinces Aki to let him go, as he sacrifices himself so that the wave can still be projected into the phantoms. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but apparently Gray gets the wave into his soul when Aki holds his hand. Actually, she seems to hold his soul's hand, as she is still holding on to him when it gets removed from his body. At any rate, the wave gets spread throughout the phantoms and the world is saved. The film ends with Aki getting transported out of the crater with the dead body of Gray in her arms, as we see an eagle fly over some mountainous landscapes. And by the way, that ending scene is gorgeous. It looks spectacular, and the song The Dream Within, sung by Lara Fabian, only enhances the beauty of it. So anyway, that's Final Fantasy The Spirits Within. As you can see, it has a lot of problems, some of them really big, but I still don't think this is a truly bad film. No, it's not perfect, far from it, but I still find it entertaining, and it's actually only when you take a really close look at it, like I just did, that you actually start to notice the bigger problems. It's not really worthy of having the Final Fantasy name on it, as it definitely doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy film, but that doesn't make it bad. Some of the concepts and ideas are fairly confusing and inconsistent, and part of me thinks it could just as well have been a live-action film, but as I said, it is an entertaining film, and it's really well made. The visuals are stunning, the acting is next to flawless, and the music by Elliot Goldenthal is spectacular. The main reason this film bombed was because people were not ready for this kind of film, or they didn't want this kind of film. Remember, this was the first attempt at a photorealistic CG feature film, and considering what they got out of that, I think you have to at least respect it. At any rate, this film is not as bad as some people would have you think. Would I recommend it? Maybe not, but it's definitely worth a look for the more curious of you out there. I guess you could say it's an okay attempt at something that didn't really work out, and I suggest renting or borrowing it if you ever get the chance. So, with that said, I'm done for this week. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you check back next week for a new episode. Thanks for watching. Bye.